Emotional love is what most people are seeking in this day and age. In the old days, material love was really of primary importance because so many cultures had a world where, women really couldn't provide for themselves. They weren't even allowed to try to do things that would provide a living in many, many cultures. Life is so different now that really because men and women are both productive, both working, both using their skills, to provide for themselves and to provide for the people they love, two people could have a relationship that has no material love in it at all. They pretty almost could if they had a lot of emotional love, okay? Unless they're having children, they don't absolutely need material love. But no one's going to actually want to do that at the end of the day, but it could happen, okay? Because really emotional love is what people are seeking the most, okay? People want to feel good on an inward level. Life is good enough in most cultures now that people are doing okay on a material level. They're going to survive. They're not at threat, actually. A lot of people are starving to death. Those people are probably watching YouTube, sadly. So we do, yes, have a lot of people who really are doing hard on the material plane. But really in this day and age that we're in, we're struggling on the emotional plane. And these cultures that are still struggling on a material plane, they're catching up. Every decade they're catching up on their material lives, slowly but surely. And eventually the emotional love will be the most important thing there too. Okay? And just as in the Dark Ages, getting your material lives together was the struggle of that age. In this age we're in now, which is a much more inner age, as shown by breaking the atom and seeing what's inside the physical form, in our case, our feelings. We're in a time where it's a struggle to find and have emotional love. And that's why people are having so much trouble in their relationships and why the divorce rate's so high. Okay? So, and why it's most important to us. Why is emotional love most important to us? Because just like in the old days, people were struggling so much materially, so material love was so important. We're struggling so much emotionally these days that emotional love becomes really important. Okay? Now the number one thing about any kind of love to remember, that if you don't have something of value, you can't get something of value. In love, the idea that you have to have money to make money really holds true. You have to have something of value to gain something of value, if it's going to be in a sustainable, committable way, because that's a two-way street. It's a give and a take, okay? So to have emotional love, yes, you have to have some affinity for each other, some emotional compatibility, let's say. And with that emotional compatibility, you'll gravitate towards different kinds of people, you'll have different connections with people. But really, most of having successful emotional love is if you have something to offer on the emotional level, and the person you're with has something to offer on an emotional level. Okay? After that, you can see what kind of things are going on between you all emotionally to see how much of that is welcome, how much of that is useful to each other. Okay? But there's three basic things that I say would probably cover the idea of what the commodities of emotional love are. Okay? One is joy, one is warmth, and one is care. Okay? The opposites of these are, indicating emotionally bankrupt, account, emotional bankruptcy, and the result, the person won't be able to maintain a committable, sustainable emotional love because they simply won't have what it takes to make that exchange. Okay? So joy, first of all. Every person needs to have their own process, their own way to have joy. And that has to be something that's not dependent on anyone else. Okay? They have to be able to make themselves feel good. I have the ability to make myself feel good. I have a commodity on the emotional level. That's what happens. If you don't have your ability to make yourself feel good, you're lacking an important commodity on the emotional level. It's not the only commodity, but it's an important one. Okay? Because joy is something that when you have it, and you connect to someone who can appreciate and receive your joy, and if they have joy, and they connect to you because you can appreciate and receive their joy, then you've got more joy. You got your joy and the joy of the others. So you get to have your joy and share theirs. So now you have more joy, okay? And that's really the whole idea of any two-way committable love relationship, is two people put everything they have together and they end up with more than what they had separately. So you got half a picture, we add it up and we don't get one picture, we get 1.5 picture, we get more, okay? It's the same with joy. It's the same with anything we're trying to create sustainable, committable love with, is that two people come together and they get more together than they had apart, okay? So something happens in that interchange. It's what we call synergy, okay? Synergy is when you get two things, put them together, and you have more, okay? Then the two halves would make you think. So there's this reaction that takes place that allows for a greater experience, okay? So when two people bring joy together and they can connect with their joy because of their compatibility, meaning what one person gets joyful about, what makes one person joyful, also is something the other person can appreciate as, something joyful, okay? Something that could produce happiness. If what makes one person joyful, like saying going to lots of parties and they just get so happy and they know as long as they can go to connect with lots of unknown people, they're going to really feel alive and happy. But the other person finds joy in solitude and isolation, then of course they have nothing of value to offer each other on the level of how they find their joy, okay? But as long as each person has the capacity to find joy and happiness somehow that's not dependent on their fixated partner, then they'll be able to find someone to share that joy with, okay? I remember one time I was in my basement fixing a friend's bike, and the first time I met this guy, and I was working on his bike for him. I think I sold him something. I was installing it for him. I was like 15 or 16 years old, and turned out he was a big rock climber, and he was talking about how he just loved rock climbing. He was so happy, and he used his bike to get around town, but he just was just so excited about rock climbing. And then he looks at me and goes, "You know what the best part is?" I go, "What?" He goes, "My wife loves climbing too. And so I never have to look for a rock climber. I wake up next to her every day for a climbing partner. I wake up next to her every day because you need someone to hold the other end of the rope." So they both found this joy in this physical exercise, this physical adventure, and they were materially useful to each other by holding the end of the rope and keeping the other person from dying. But they loved this. They lived for climbing, and so being able to share that together gave them something to be joyous about. So simple. And of course, sharing that joy is going to create an emotional connection and allow for them to sustain emotional love. Okay? Warmth. This is also really, really important. Warmth is important for emotional love because warmth is what feels good. Okay? Imagine two people, like I just mentioned, who love to go climb together, so they share this joy. But when they go out of it, when they go there, one person, the minute they get scared, gets hard and harsh with the person. "Hold on to that rope, damn it!" And it's like this all the time. It's not going to feel good. So one of the big things is warmth. We can say anything to anyone with harshness and coldness or with warmth. And everyone has their tolerance level before they get harsh. Okay, the higher your tolerance level that you can stay warm in more and more and more difficult situations and still stay warm, the more of this warmth commodity you have to offer another person. What's nice about warmth compatibility or warmth is it helps us stay connected to the people we love on an emotional level. The minute we get cold or harsh because our tolerance has gone too extreme, life doesn't really work out all the time. There's things that bother us. But how many things have to bother us? How much buried do we have to be under, this really sucks, this is really unfair, this hurts me, before we lose our ability to be warm. Everyone's different on that, okay? Some people, it's like the moment something happens that perturbs them, they're snapping. Another person can take boatloads before they finally break and say harsh words, okay? So how much warmth can you hold on to in the face of the fact that life is hard? And that love is hard, relationships are hard, your partner is going to be hard on you. It's going to be difficult at times, but can you stay warm? Okay? This is a huge commodity because the minute we get harsh, flippant, cold, distant, anything like this with our partner, we've basically lost the emotional love because it's not sustained. So warmth, our ability to keep a warm heart, an open, warm heart, is what allows us to sustain the committable emotional love. The minute we go into the harsh place, and the longer it takes us to get out of a harsh place, the more we aren't able to sustain it. Okay? And so warmth is a huge commodity. Everyone feels good when they're treated warmly. No one feels good when they're treated rudely, flippantly, when they're insulted, when they're don't even have to say the words, we've all felt it, right? So being treated with warmth versus being treated in any other way, okay, that hugely impacts us emotionally and goes a long way. So two people who have the ability to stay warm under most situations are going to be able to have committable, sustainable love. A person who's not able to maintain warmth, in most situations, it's just not, the relationships won't last for them because other people aren't going to want to be there. It's going to be painful to the other person. They're going to have to withdraw to avoid that harshness or whatever it is. Okay? The last really important commodity is care. And care is related to warmth, okay? But I'm talking here on emotional care. To actually care for the person's emotions. That's a huge commodity to be able to care for another person's emotions. The more we can care for another person's emotions, the greater that commodity. If we can do it all the time, we're a trillionaire. If we can do it 70% of the time, we're a billionaire. Okay? Of emotional care. So the ability to care when someone, when maybe we don't want to, let's say. Okay? Because see, when we get hurt, it's harder to care. It's just a normal human reaction. When we get hurt, our wounds take over and we lose our ability to care. How much can a person take before they're only caring about how they feel and not caring about how anyone else feels? That's what I'm talking about here. It's like material love. How much money can you lose before you are broke? It's like, how much can you take before you lose your care for another person? Okay? That's the care. And that's a huge part of emotional love. And so if people can emotionally care for each other, they have sustainable emotional love. Okay? And that's really related to warmth, because warmth and care kind of come hand in hand. In fact, we usually, such a common thing, we'll hardly just say to someone, you're warm, when we talk to them on the emotional level. When we say you're warm, that means your hands are warm, your feet are warm, whatever. When you touch me, I don't get a chill, okay? But usually we'll say you're warm and caring. That's like the whole thing. Warmth and care really come hand in hand. And this is a commodity that a lot of people need to raise, especially in the modern world, because in the old days, people realized there was a way of behavior, that we behave certain ways with people just in order to maintain respect and care. And we had these ways of behaving, they're called manners, okay? Because there's times when it's really hard to be warm and caring, because there's times when we're really hurting units. And traditional cultures, a lot of it was about being respectful, warm, and caring in all situations, okay? Now we live in this culture, in this world, especially in the Western world. In Asian countries, there's still a lot more of this traditional way of behaving going on. But so much in Western countries, there's this idea that we can just vomit over anyone at any time, and it's up for them to love and accept us, even when we're being mean to them on a regular basis because we're vomiting all over them, or being flippant, or cold, or indifferent. When we're not being warm and caring, when we're not having manners. You can do it, but you're going to lose that person eventually. Okay? So we really don't need to go back to realizing that we have to learn how to behave. Okay? Sri Yukteswar used to tell Yogananda all the time, learn how to behave, Yogananda, or Mukunda. His name wasn't Yogananda back then. Okay? Learn to behave, learn to behave. That's what he kept telling him. The thing he heard most, learn to behave. Teaches them how to do meditation technique once, tells them to learn how to behave 1,000 times. And it's really, really important. If you can learn how to behave, which means you want to vomit all over somebody, you want to show your irritation at someone, but if you can learn how to behave and maintain warmth and care, you'll be able to have emotional, sustainable love. If the moment you start getting irritated, you just decide you're going to dump it and shed it and show your emotions in a negative way to that person, then you're pushing that person away. You're getting less of what you want. You're going to end up with less emotional love. So learning to behave is really important. And like I said, it's something that seems to be really lost in this day and age. I mean, I hear guys, thankfully not in this neighborhood, but I've lived places where I hear guys telling their wife to get in the fucking car, bitch. It's like, wow, it's like, I understand you're angry, but you can just say, please get into the car. You can still try to maintain that warmth. You don't have to say, get in the fucking car, bitch, And the woman was saying, do you hear how you're talking to me? And he's like, get in the fucking car, bitch. And she's like, do you hear yourself? And he goes, get in the fucking car, bitch. Finally, she got in the car, So that's not behaving. She was behaving like an angel. She was saying, do you hear what you're saying to me? Do you know what you're saying to me? Because she knew he was upset. So she was behaving. He wasn't. Who felt loved in that situation? He's going to feel a lot more loved. Because she could have told him, you're being a fucking asshole, and thrown a brick at him or something. But she didn't. Okay? So it's really important to learn to behave, to have love on the emotional level, because people are sensitive. And people say, oh, but you're too sensitive. And it's like, you're not? I mean, shit, show me a person who's not sensitive on this planet. I'll show you a dead person, okay? Especially in this day and age, we're sensitive, It's like in the dark ages, most people walked around constantly, their stomach going, ouch, 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 I need more food, going to bed hungry. And most people going to bed hungry every night. So, there's this constant ouch going on in their lives. And nowadays, we have that ouch on the emotional level. Our emotions are just like ready to be hurt. We're all very, very sensitive. Okay? Because everyone born in this age is here to develop on an emotional level, on an inner emotional level. That's the name of the game right now. That's why psychology boomed in the last 150 years. That's why everything is different in regards to how people are operating. And so we have to learn how to behave. So behaving, it's an emotional commodity. Okay? And a person would rather be with a person they're not compatible with, when they can have a two-way street of warmth and care, than with someone that they have more compatibilities with coldness and harshness. Basically, a person would rather not go climbing with someone who's going to be cold and harsh. They'd rather play video games that they don't care about with someone who's warm and caring. Okay? So, this is a huge part of having the ability to have emotional love, because then it's sustainable. Okay? And the beautiful thing about emotional love is when two people come together who have warmth and care for life, and they're able to share that warmth and care, and if two people come together who have an avenue of joy in this world, or they have their own joy, okay, then they can share that if they're compatible, if they can find connection with those commodities they have. Because again, you can have something valuable, but the other person might not want it. You got to find the person who you've got was valuable. Okay, and this direction of our joy is the thing that needs to be compatible. Warmth and care, okay, that's pretty much universal qualities. But the avenue of our joy, the way we find our joy in life, to share that, it has to be meaningful to the other person too, ideally. If you come home and you're all joyous and happy, you want to share something with another person, and they're like, oh, I don't need to hear, I don't even care about rock climbing. I'm just glad you're not dead. It's not, and then you come home and you have to just drop your joy. So there has to be an element of compatibility there. And then also on the emotional level, there simply has to be an element of, okay, we can feel each other's emotional stuff enough to build on, okay? But when you have that, you get more, and you get an abundance of joy, an abundance of warmth, an abundance of care, an abundance of emotional love, all right? Now, what do we do with that is that starts bleeding into the spiritual level, okay? So Yogananda used to say, he goes, love your spouse as yourself. Learn to love your spouse as yourself. He goes, first learn to love yourself, then learn to love your spouse as yourself. Then love your kids. Then learn how to love your community. Then learn how to love your city. And then learn how to love the whole world. He really talked many times over how men and women coming together in love was here to teach them how to have love between each other. And after that, to have love in greater and greater ways. So essentially saying that love is meant to be cultivated. People are meant to learn how to be in love, to learn the value of love, and then share love with the rest of the world in a greater and greater capacity until they're loving the whole world. Okay? And that's when people are getting emotional care, when people have the Venetian, stable, committable, emotional love, then naturally their love starts to spread outside of their little their two-person thing. And that love starts to fall on other people. And now they're spreading light and love, to the other people they meet and connect to. And then at that point, they're actually having spiritual love. Okay, so it'll bleed into there. Just as when people have material love, it does feel good on an emotional level. And they start developing emotional love. So, emotional love is the key to developing spiritual love. If two people aren't doing good emotionally, they're not feeling emotionally connected, they're not feeling a stable, committable, emotional love, they're not feeling warmth and care and emotional respect with each other, they're not able to share their deepest joy with each other and build on that joy, then they can't together go to the step of spiritual love. Because when one person spreads love and light, the other person goes, what about me? You haven't even found love with me on an emotional level, now you're spreading love and light. Get back here. It doesn't work. So it's really important that people who want to develop spiritual love, they have a partnership that is actually providing emotional love. Otherwise they can't take that step together. They can just take that step alone. It's actually really funny. There's a funny story along these lines of Lahiri Mayasaya, who was Sri Yukteswar's guru, who was the guru of Yogananda. When he started being a guru, all these disciples were coming all the time, and he was paying all the attention to his disciples. And his wife got really upset, And she walks into the room one day and starts chewing him out, just doing the good old 6-inch tongue and the 6-foot man. Except he probably wasn't 6 foot tall, so it wasn't even that much work for her. And ripping into him, oh, you don't spend enough time with the family, you don't spend enough time with me, and da-da-da-da-da, what about us? And he just disappears. Right in front of her, poof, he's gone. And she's like, what? And then she realized that he was really, had developed to an enlightened state. And of course she's like, oh, I'm sorry, what did I say? I didn't realize, And then he goes, it's okay, I couldn't, I had to wait until now to show you, because you still had to burn some karmas before you can be aware of all this. And now those karmas have been finished, and now it's time for you to focus on your spiritual life. And then she got behind him and backed him. The point I'm making with that story, it's really, really hard to keep your spouse happy when you start spreading love and light. Even the Lahiri Messiah had a hard time doing that. Okay? So if the two people actually have a spiritual connection, meaning they want to share love and light in a similar way, then that's something they can actually do side by side. Okay? But even if they don't, as they develop emotional love within the partnership, stable, committable emotional love, they're naturally going to spread love and light in a casual way. It won't be in this way. It'll be in the way they behave and the way they treat other people. It'll help other people feel good. Okay? So, this emotional love is really important. It's really important for the world. People who are having toward relationships, people who have no emotional love, who grew up with no emotional love as children, who had relationships with no emotional love, where are they going to find the resources, the emotional resources to spread love and light, right? It's really important to get this. Most of the work we have to do in our relationships is developing a greater capacity for emotional love. Okay? And the only way we do that is to learn to have more emotional love on ourselves, to truly learn to love ourselves more, to accept ourselves more, to work through our psychology, to work through all the things about us that are making us feel tormented with ourselves. We have to very much improve the relationship we have with ourselves, basically. The relationship we have with ourselves determines the level of our emotional love we have to offer and the measure of emotional love we can receive. Okay? Because that's your foundation relationship. If you have a healthy relationship with yourself, you're feeling good about who you are. You're treating yourself well. You're listening to your feelings and accommodating them. And so you've got a good foundation of emotional being. And so when life gets hard out here emotionally, you can still behave. You can still be warm and caring. You have the energy because your core relationship with yourself provides that. But if your core relationship is cats and dogs fighting, not those sweet little cats and dogs actually love each other, we're talking cats and dogs who one wants to get eaten, one doesn't want to get eaten, and the other one's really hungry, then sure, how are you going to handle all the stress, the emotional stress from the outside and behave? You can't. Because you got such a battle going on in yourself. You're already struggling with yourself so much. So that needs to be healed first. So if you're not having emotional love, if you're not able to maintain warmth and caring in you, if you're not able to be a joyous, warm, and caring being in your relationship, you have emotional work to do. Okay? So what that means is, when it gets hard, can you still maintain warmth and care? When it gets hard, are you able to go and have a place of joy in your life? Okay? Or do you see no avenue of joy ever again just because your relationship's going to hell? Those will let you know how good your relationship is with yourself. If your relationship with yourself is good, and you can always find a way to have joy and happiness, and you can always find a way to be warm and caring because that's how you are within yourself and towards yourself, then you're doing great. But if any of those things you struggle with, and really most of us are, then you have to work on your psychology. You need to work on healing your emotions. You need to work on that relationship with yourself. Psychology is a broad term. The way I'm using it is, psychology is having a healthier relationship with number one, with yourself, just like Jesus said. Love yourself, then you can have fun and love your neighbor. Okay? So psychology is what Jesus is telling us to do when he says, love yourself. Have a good relationship with yourself. Have a relationship of warmth, care, and joy with yourself. And then see how easy it is to have that same relationship with your neighbor. But without that, no, there's no hope for you. You cannot have a good relationship with anybody in a committable, sustainable way. I think some of the most important things we can do on an astrological level to help on the emotional level is learn your Lajitati Avashtas. I got 2 monster courses on those. And learn about your Rahu and Ketu, because those really can get us stuck emotionally as well. I'd say the Lajitati Avashtas are more important though. So there's tons of psychology there, and so many of my students have taken those courses and really had miracles of changing their lives, because they were able to see how they were treating themselves badly and therefore having a miserable life, and they decided, I'm going to treat myself better on this level, and magically their whole lives will change. Once we start treating ourselves better on any level, that's when our lives magically can change. Because everything that's happening in our life is a symbol. It's an omen of our relationship with ourselves. So if we get a person who's constantly judging us, and we attract a person who's judging us all the time, instead of being warm, what does that mean? Well, it means this person is an omen of how you treat yourself. You treat yourself with judgment. So try treating yourself with love, care, acceptance, and respect. And that person will do the same, or go poof, and a person will come in that treats you with love, care, and respect and warmth. Okay? So we really most of what I teach on astrology is how to have a better relationship with yourself, how to work out your psychology. In the old days, everyone cared about predictions. Predictions were the most important aspect of astrology. Why? Because people were in dire need of material benefits. People were struggling materially. Nowadays, you can live and have the United States government pay you to live for free if you come up with the right excuse. We all can manage somehow. It's much easier than it's ever been. And yes, the homeless population is growing, sadly. But the reason it is because of their psychologies. Most homeless people, and I won't say there's exceptions, but the majority of the homeless people, the reason they're homeless, because on an emotional level, they have not managed to have a good relationship with themselves, and eventually that impacts the material level. There's a point you have such a bad relationship with yourselves emotionally, you'll just let your material life go to hell. Okay? You'll sabotage your material life. And so the homeless we see these days, the majority of them that we see in countries like America and stuff that aren't actual refugees from some cataclysmic event, are there because they're refugees from their own emotional turmoil. Okay? So we really, really have to work on this emotional level this lifetime. It's the critical thing. Predictions, doesn't matter. Oh, when you're getting a new job, doesn't matter, because you're going to be miserable there because you have a bad relationship with yourself. When's my next love coming? Doesn't matter, because you're not starving now, and he's not going to feed you. Like in the Middle Ages, you finally got a husband who brings home a deer to feed you once a week. And, you're going to be miserable in the next relationship, I predict, if you don't work out your psychology. It's really like that. We have to work out our psychology, have this better relationship with ourselves. And then when the good things come that we predict, they'll be good things. Okay? Otherwise, they're not going to be good things if you can't emotionally have love with them. Okay? So, we mostly talked again about the committable, sustainable, two-way street emotional love. Feels good to both people. Okay? That means it has to feel good to both people. So let's say one person is being warm and caring to another, and when another person's down, they retaliate with coldness and indifference. It doesn't feel good both ways. It's no longer committable, sustainable love. At that moment, it's charitable love. Okay? Where one person is being warm and caring and getting nothing back, that feels good. Maybe they're getting hard love back. But at that point, it's not committable and sustainable love. Okay? How long of a time period of coldness and indifference and whatever, of lack and warmth and care, do we get from a partner before we consider it to be not sustained anymore? Because every relationship's going to have times where your spouse is going to be a little cold and indifferent. Really, at most, it should be resolved before nightfall. Okay? If it's not resolved by the time you go to bed, you're getting into the territory of your commitment is really breaking at this point. Ideally, seriously, ideally, 5 minutes. I mean, in a really beautiful, healthy emotional relationship where people really have emotional love, it's possible to never have more than 5 minutes where they're feeling cold and indifferent to each other. Okay? That's really rare. But, it's possible. And that's what you should strive for in your relationships. If it's taking longer than 5 minutes, get back to working on your psychology. It's not about working on your partner. It's about working on your psychology, your warmth, your care, your relationship with yourself. So you have that foundation to break out of a bad spell with your partner in 5 minutes, within 5 minutes of it happening, instead of 5 months, 5 hours. We should strive to not have more than 5 minutes of hell on an emotional level with our partners. Okay? All right. And that's a challenging number. Okay? That's a challenging time. It's hard to reach that, but that's what we really should strive for. We can't get to where we're never going to have it. We're going to have times, where it's not that way. Like when even Lahiri Mayasaya, for 30 seconds, his wife came in and chewed him out. At 1 second, he disappears. At 35 seconds, he's back, and everything's fixed within a minute, okay? So, there's always going to be times, no matter who you're with, that your emotional love is going to crack. And if there's a foundation within ourselves, yourself, and a foundation within your partner for emotional, committable, sustainable love, and you have the right connection, and you have a history of demonstrating care, and you have a history of demonstrating warmth, it doesn't need more than 5 minutes. But do you have a history of coldness and indifference? And the first time it took 5 minutes, and then the next time it took 10 minutes, and the next time it took a day, and the next time it took a month, and the next time it took a year, and then the next time it was like never? That's what happens when you have a history of coldness and indifference. If one person is being warm and caring, another person is being cold and indifferent and flippant, things like that, then the person who's being warm and caring every time is going to take longer to come back with warmth and care when they get negativity in response. Because they're getting hurt. And no animal runs into a place of pain. When it's guaranteed, every time they go there, they get more. So every time the animal gets more cautious, takes more time against running into that place of pain, even though that pain has something they want, they'll take a longer time to run towards it. And one day the animal will go, that food smells really good, that thing I want and need smells really good, but I'm not going to run into that pain anymore. It's every time. So I'm leaving. I'm not going to run into it no matter how yummy it looks. Okay? And we do the same. So warmth and care, if you want to keep your partner, warmth and care are important. And it's such a funny thing that so many people have this idea of, we have to get our partner. No, you don't. You don't have to focus on getting a partner. You have to focus on keeping a partner. Okay? If you're a man, you have to treat your wife, your spouse, your girl in such a way that she's simply going to feel better with you than anyone else. The minute you stop treating her in a way that someone else can't just come along and make her feel better, you're at risk of losing her. Okay? And same with women. If you're not able to be warm and caring with your man, then, or your partner, if you're gay, then really, it's just a matter of time before someone else is going to show up who is. And you're going to lose them. You have to learn how to keep your woman. You have to learn how to keep your man. Getting them's easy. I mean, you just get them by accident. It's like they just show up. They crash into you. And they fall out of the sky and you catch them. They show up all over the place. But keeping them is hard. I had one friend who's like, mom just hammered this into her, growing up. You have to learn how to keep a man. You have to be like this, this, and this. You have to learn how to keep a man. Don't expect him to just stay there, And you have to learn how to keep your man. And, well, men do as well, have learned how to keep their woman. The way we keep our woman, we keep our men, and we keep our partners if we're gay, is by having warmth and care on an emotional level and sharing joy on an emotional level. No one's going to keep their partner if they're not practicing warmth and care with them. And no one's going to be able to practice warmth and care if they're not having a good relationship with themselves. Okay? So we have a lot of work to do on this level in this world. More than half the people get divorced because of the difficulty in this level. Okay? Now, that's committable, sustainable. Then we got the hard love. Okay? The hard emotional love. Well, that's when you care about someone, but in order for them to have more joy and happiness, you have to not give them what they want on an emotional level. You might have to retract your love and care so they can have time to develop their love and care on their own. So they can develop their love and care, develop a healthy relationship with themselves. See, the problem is we are brainwashed into thinking that we'll have emotional love when we work it out with another person. But that's not the truth. We'll have emotional love when we have a healthier relationship with ourselves. And then it's possible to work out a few things with the other person. But if you don't have emotional love with yourself, there's nothing in hell you can do to develop sustainable, committable, emotional love with a person. Okay? So sometimes when we aren't able to maintain committable, sustainable love because a person has to work on themselves, then we have to give hard love, which is, saying, this has to be done. Okay, I know this doesn't feel good to hear this, but I can't stay in this relationship if you're not able to find more warmth in your heart. Where you really are saying, look, this is something that's not going to feel good to you. Okay? You're not leaving, you're just saying, for me to stay. But Patricia Allen used to say, she'd say, go talk to your partner and say, I'll stay here as long as I'm able to. But with this, I will not be able to stay forever. I won't be able to sustain this. So you give the person hard love. It feels horrible to hear that you're doing something to your partner that will eventually make them leave. No one wants to hear that, right? It's like the last thing you want to hear from your partner. And sometimes we have to give that to our partner, and they have to give it to us. Okay? And then we can see if we can develop a healthy enough relationship with ourselves to offer that warmth and care or joy, whatever was missing, whatever we were short on an emotional level. And then the relationship can survive. If not, eventually the partner is not going to survive. It's going to be able to handle that, and I'll have to leave just for their own self-preservation. Okay? So, the way to give hard love is not to yell and scream at your partner. Okay? That's how it's usually given. That's hard love. It doesn't feel good. It's useful to me because I need to learn this. I need to figure this out. But if you're doing it that way with your partner, then what the person usually has to learn is, why am I trying to love the wrong person? That's their lesson then. If you're asking your partner to do something out of love and care, saying, I won't be able to stay here. I'm going to stay as long. I'm trying to stay. I'm hurting. I'm trying to stay. I'm not leaving now, but I won't be able to handle this forever. Then you're giving them an opportunity of hard love that says, okay, work on yourself. And then we'll have a better relationship. But if you're yelling and screaming at your partner and hurting them and sticking little knives of criticism and blame in them, then the hard love for them is to find out, wow, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I trying to love a person who would treat me like this on a regular basis? Not every once in a blue moon, but on a regular basis. And that's the lesson of the hard love there. Okay? Now, charitable love on an emotional level, honestly, doesn't usually work as good as charitable love on a material level. Okay? On a material level, charitable love is like, okay, I'm going to give you something on a material level that gets you through this difficult time you're in. Okay? So the person gets through that difficult time, and by then they usually get some things going for themselves to manage their material lives. But when you give charitable love on an emotional level, it so easily can turn into an emotional addiction. Why? Because we're taught that we have to work out our material lives. You have to be financially successful. We tell it to the boys, we tell it to the girls. So everyone has this idea, yes, I have to be able to manage myself materially. I have to get a job that will provide for me. I need to not be dependent on everybody. But on an emotional level, all the movies are teaching us, find the person you can hang all your emotions on and all your emotional pain will go away. So when someone gives charitable love, it's so easy to get addicted to that and say, oh, I don't have to do any emotional work for myself because I got this person making me happy. But just like in material world, we have to develop our own resources. On the emotional world, we're not meant to subsist on charity of someone else giving us warmth and care and giving us the love we're not giving ourselves, and someone giving joy to us and cheering us up instead of us giving the joy to ourselves. No. At times, yeah, we need to receive that charity. At times we're down and we need someone to be warm to us, loving to us, cheer us up, even when we have nothing to give them back, right? But we're not meant to go, oh, I got my fix now. I just go to this person whenever I need an emotional fix. No, that's not how we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get cheered up. We're supposed to feel some love and care and compassion. And then we're supposed to, out of that, develop our own emotional resources and develop our own emotional bank account of warmth, care, and joy, as I've talked about. But we're trained to think we don't have to do that our happiness is dependent upon the person we love. And that's the lie that we have to forget. Your happiness is dependent upon the relationship with yourself, and then you can share that with the person that you can connect to. But if you make your happiness dependent on another person, then what you get is no happiness and no sustainable, committable, emotional love. At best, you'll be an emotional junkie, okay? Which is no better than being, a heroin junkie at the end of the day, because you're going to be in the same place. You're going to be stuck with no ability to make yourself joyous. You're not going to be working on the relationship with yourselves. Okay? So this is a hard level. And don't feel bad if you relate to all this stuff, because this is the age where this is the battle. The battle is not to see if we can pick enough food to survive. We get to go to the grocery store now. Okay, the battle is, can we find enough emotional value in ourselves? Can we develop enough care and love for ourselves that we have something to share with others? Okay, that's the battle we're fighting. And boy, is our garden, our emotional garden, full of weeds. Not only full of weeds, it's full of toxic plants. That one bite can make you do all kinds of crazy stuff and ruin all the love in your life in 5 minutes. So this is, we have to work this. There's no magical formula here. You're not having emotional love, you have to work on your emotional life within yourself. And you know what the beautiful thing is? The most beautiful relationship you're ever going to have is the relationship you have with yourself. It's an extremely beautiful relationship to learn to actually have a good relationship with yourself. I mean, think about it. We spend all this time trying to care for another person and be there for another person, yet we're never caring about ourselves. We're never being there for ourselves. And when you start spoiling yourself a little bit, just start actually realizing that you've got two parts. You have your receptive part and the part of you that can do. And when you start using those parts together in a relationship of love, in a relationship of male, do, and female, receive, then you are developing a beautiful relationship. It's the most important relationship you're going to have in your life, because that's the relationship you're relationship with everyone else depends on. And that's the relationship your relationship with God depends on. If that relationship sucks, all your relationships suck. Okay? And when you start having this beautiful relationship with yourself, wow, it's like you get to be in love with yourself. You know, like you fall in love with some stranger, right? Oh, imagine that you can be in love with yourself in the very same way. You can have this divine romance with yourself, you know? And then you can have a threesome with another person. You know, you got your parts, having this divine relationship, and you meet someone else and they've got their parts. Now it's not even a threesome, it's a foursome. They got their two parts, having a wonderful, beautiful relationship with yourself, and you say, hey, want to have a foursome for the rest of our lives? You know? And then you have a beautiful relationship. All right? So, we have to cultivate on an emotional level. It's the most important thing we have to do this age. Nothing will make up for it. No material love will make up for it. Okay? All right. So Jupiter's a charitable love. It's when we're being loving, caring, warm, cheering people up and getting nothing back. How long should we do it? As long as it's useful to them. As long as we have the abundance of joy and energy and warmth and care to provide the person without getting drained and exhausted. If we're getting drained and exhausted, it's not love. Because charity only comes out of abundance. If we're doing it to the point of draining and exhaustion, it just shows we have a terrible relationship with ourselves, and we think we have to kill ourselves for someone who's never going to be happy in order to be a decent person. We have some relationship like that we have to heal within ourselves. Because again, charity only comes out of abundance. We have no business giving anything to another person on a one-way street if it's not coming out of abundance. We're never meant to drain ourselves, to give all of our money away, to be on the streets for anyone else because of charity. Okay? It comes out of our abundance, out of the extra we have. And if you're depleting yourself beyond your extra, beyond your emotional reserves, beyond your energetic reserves, you've got a deep psychological wound you have to discover of why you would destroy yourself for a junkie. For someone who, when you give them money, they go buy drugs. When you give them emotional care, they don't become happier people. They just enjoy it while it's there. They just say, thanks for the Band-Aid with the smiley on. When do I get my next Band-Aid? Okay? That's not love. It's not useful. And it's draining to you, so it's not charitable love. And then if you're doing that, you have a lesson about how you're treating yourself. Why would you kill yourself? No animal would kill themselves like that. But humans do it all the time. Okay, why? That's what we need to discover by looking for your Lajitari Avashtas. And when you watch that course and see your Lajitari Avashtas, you'll go, oh, this is why I'm killing myself. And this is why they're killing themselves on me, you know. Okay, finally, on an emotional level, one of the, really, in this day and age, one of the most common types of emotional love is the love them and leave them. Okay? Because you're so often going to find, because this is the age of emotional disrepair, where we are all born here only because we're emotionally screwed up, is that so often it won't be a two-way, committable, sustainable street. And when it's not, we have to say love them and leave them. Right? We can't maintain a relationship that's not sustainable and committable. If it's not feeling good on an emotional level, if it's not useful on an emotional level, you love them and leave them. You have to. Okay? That'll give them the chance to develop their own joy and love and warmth. And it'll give you a chance to do that. Because that's something you do alone. And love just gets in the way of that. Because we're so deeply trained to think, now that I have a partner, it's going to be done for me by their presence. And that's a lie. Okay? So if it's not committable, sustainable, you can keep it charitable as long as you have the reserves to make it charitable. But then eventually you're going to have to say, this isn't useful anymore. On an emotional level, we aren't progressing. I'm no happier, you're no happier, or you're no happier, or whatever, however the case is. This isn't useful. So we have to cut loose, and let God decide our next step in our emotional development. Let God show us the next step in what's useful to us emotionally. And oftentimes that next step is simply isolation, where we can have and start discovering a healthier relationship with ourselves, when we tend to ignore when we meet someone else. Okay, we go, oh, now that I have this new person, you're out of here. And that's what we do with our personal relationship with ourselves. It's like we're just waiting for a new person, then we're going to boot this person we were born to have a relationship with inside of ourselves in favor of the new person. Okay? So sometimes we need to boot the new person so we can get back to having the relationship with the person that really matters, ourselves. And we need to do that when it's not committable and sustainable on an emotional level. It's not feeling good, and it's not allowing people to have more warmth, love, and joy. It's not useful. It's not healing to their emotional bodies. Okay? And this is a really huge thing because, see, when people come together, it's very complicated what's happening. When you come together with a person, it's not you coming together with them. Oh, it has nothing to do with you and them, hardly. What it has to do with is, it has to do with all your ancestral influences. It's your ancestral influences, how your parents treated you, how your grandparent treated your parents, how your great-grandparent treated your grandparents. Going back 7 generations, there's this wave of energy moving through your life, going back 7 generations, that's really determining what's going to happen on an emotional level with anybody to a large degree. Because your family had a way of being. Your great-great-grandfather had a way of being that impacted your great-grandfather, that impacted your grandfather, that impacted your father, that impacted you. Okay? And when you connect to that way of being, you're going to read it as a completely different thing. Okay? So for instance, maybe one person had a father who had a sarcastic sense of humor and love. And so he would put on a particular facial expression that would say, "You're bad, but I love you." Okay? And so that person puts that facial expression out there to the person he loves. "You're bad, but I love you." But let's say that person's father or mother had a similar facial expression that was, "How can you do that? I'm not going to say anything, but I detest that." So one person's communicating on an emotional level, "You're bad, but I love you." And another person's receiving an expression that says, "I detest you." And so when people come together, there's all these ancestral patterns of body language and emotions and facial expressions and tones that are really conveying different messages that can make one person feel loved and one person scared. Okay? And so when the final thing when 2 people come together emotionally is, are there ancestral influences that are pushing on their way of being? Are these ancestral influences conducive to healing, or do they wound the other person? See, we all come from totally screwed up families, you know? We've all got crazy ancestral influences. How do I know? Because here we are. We wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. Okay? Then we come together with this background of ancestral stuff, some of which has resulted in some healthy ability to care and love for ourselves and therefore another person. And along with that, a bunch of tragic, experiences that the subconscious is trying to deal with and survive and protect you from. And then you come together and it's kind of almost hit and miss of how anyone's going to make you feel because of these ancestral influences that are moving through you. Our relationship with our parents determines our relationship with our partner more than any other thing. And their relationship with you depends on their relationship with their parent, and so on and so on and so on. And so there's this huge ancestral wave behind us. That ancestral wave is our karmic wave. Okay, it's the same thing. They're mirror images of each other. All right? And when those waves come together, there's a big part of us that has not a lot to say about how we're going to feel in the face of that wave. Okay? So when people come together emotionally, they have to see, is that karmic wave, is that ancestral wave? When we come together, does it create an affinity of acceptance and healing that lets us heal and grow emotionally? Or do we end up both feeling more wounded and hurt? Does it just prod those ancestral wounds and those ancestral pains and those parental wounds and those scar tissues we had to put on to protect ourselves when we were children? And that's a huge part of if there's going to be emotional love in a romantic relationship. Okay? And so that you have to experience. And so as you have a better relationship with yourself, you'll have more or less challenging experiences. I don't even want to use the word challenging. More or less healing experiences with everyone you meet, based on their relationship with themselves and their ancestral wave, their karmic wave. And so even when you have two warm and caring people come together who both have the capacity for joy, you have to see, when we embrace, do we push the pain and just push people into a greater state of pain? Or when we embrace, do we provide a place for healing? Okay? Now, a big part of creating that place for emotional healing, which is what we all need in this day and age, is the capacity to have your own joy, warmth, and care. Okay? But the person might just trigger you because of a way you say something that, or the way you are, or something about you that triggers an unconscious memory about someone who hurt them. And so they might be really sensitive to you in a way that you don't even intend, and vice versa. So there is this unknown, out of control part of emotional love. Okay? There is always this unknown factor that you're not in control of. Okay? And you have to experiment and check and see. That's why I say don't have sex with the new person for at least 6 months. See how you're really responding to each other emotionally before you get really in each other's face and bonding with sex. See if when you bring your emotions together, is it really being a healing experience? Or when you come together emotionally, is it a wounding experience? Okay? Because you don't want to bond if it's in a wounding experience. You want to bond if it's a healing experience. Okay? So, you need to be aware of that too. And these things are what we're trying to heal. These ancestral influences, these karmic influences on our psychology, they're the same thing. Those are the things we're trying to heal by having a better relationship with ourselves. When we have a perfect relationship with ourselves, they're all healed. If we have a horrid relationship with ourselves, it's because none of them are healed. Okay? So we have to heal these things. As we heal these things, there's more and more greater likelihood that the people we come into contact with will be able to have a healing emotional environment with them. If these things are unhealed, there's no chance of having an emotionally healing environment with anybody. Okay? Not on a two-way street. On a one-way charitable street, yes. But charitable streets doesn't last. You'll lose that person if it's charity. It has to be a two-way street if you want to keep them. And so lots of times it's love them and leave them, because it's emotionally not useful. People aren't healing emotionally in the presence of each other. So now it's time to love them and leave them, be alone, let God decide what the next experience needs to be to help the person heal emotionally. Okay? Sometimes the best thing we can do for someone, the only useful thing we can do on an emotional level, is not engage with them emotionally anymore. The most useful thing we can do for us, for ourselves, is not engage with a particular person anymore. And if that's what's most useful, that's when it's time for Saturn love. Okay? Saturn love is love. It's about what's most useful. Doing nothing is most useful. Then you're dealing with the Saturn love. The love them and leave them. Okay? All right, enough on that. Next, we'll talk about spiritual love. Thank you.